Today, we're jumping into a story that absolutely blew up online. A powerful story about a father's rage, a shocking abuse of power, and what happens when a crowd of silent onlookers is suddenly faced with one person's incredible courage. But first, let me ask you something. When you see something wrong, something you know in your gut is completely unfair, what's your first instinct? Do you jump in, or do you kind of hang back? Just keep that question in mind as we get into this. Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story starts on a totally normal day with a 16-year-old named Rima. Her exams are finally over, and she's got that weight off your shoulders feeling that we all know and love. This feeling of peace is so important because in just a few moments, it's going to be completely shattered. She's on a street she's walked down 1,000 times before, a place that should feel completely safe and familiar. But as we're about to see, sometimes the most ordinary places can become the backdrop for something truly awful. And then, bam, a figure steps out and blocks her path. It's a police officer, maybe 40 years old, heavy-set, and his eyes, they don't have that look of here to help. They're just cold, hard authority. You can imagine Rima's heart just starts pounding. And here it is, the first move in his twisted game, a completely fake accusation, claiming she came from the wrong lane. I mean, come on, it's a classic bully tactic. Just make up a problem out of thin air to show you're in charge and set the stage for what you really want. Her response is exactly what you'd expect, right? She's confused, she's scared. But for someone who gets off on abusing their power, that kind of vulnerability isn't a signal to back off. Oh no, it's a green light to push even harder. So this is where the story gets bigger than just two people. A crowd starts to form, and of course, everyone pulls out their phones to record. It's almost a reflex these days. But notice what they don't do. Nobody steps in. This is a textbook example of the bystander effect, that weird psychological thing where if a bunch of people are watching something bad happen, everyone just assumes someone else will act. And so, nobody does. And right here, the officer shows his true colors. This was never about a crime. It was about shaking her down for money. He's using his uniform and the public shame of it all to try and force her to pay up. Her tears, the fact she has no money, that doesn't stop him. It just confirms that he's got all the control. And then he does the unthinkable. Ignoring her screams, her begging for mercy, he takes out a rope, ties her feet, and hoists her upside down from an iron pole right there in the middle of the street. The crowd gasps. Her books, her dreams, everything just scatters in the dust. She's left hanging there, a public spectacle of cruelty and shame. The crowd just watches, totally frozen. The officer stands there, actually looking proud of his disgusting display. But then, a new sound cuts through that suffocating silence. The heavy, rhythmic thud of army boots, marching with a serious purpose. And just like that, the sea of silent, fearful faces parts. And walking right through them is a man whose presence is like a storm cutting through the calm. Where the crowd felt fear, he felt pure fury. This is Colonel Deepak Verma. This is Rima's father. The moment he sees his daughter hanging from that pole, a roar just erupts from him that completely shatters the street's terrified silence. That wasn't just a question, that was a promise that someone was about to pay. The officer, totally startled, tries to mumble some pathetic excuse about teaching her discipline. But Colonel Verma just walks right up to him, his voice like thunder, and makes it crystal clear. You didn't enforce the law. You broke it. You didn't tarnish her honor. You disgraced your own uniform. And talk is cheap. Action followed. In 3 swift, decisive moves, justice is served. He grabs the corrupt officer, sends him stumbling back. He rips the rope from the pole, and he catches his daughter as she falls, holding her safe in his arms. But then, while holding his daughter, he confronts the second injustice of the day, the crowd's silence. His words don't just shame them, they empower them. They give them a leader. This is how you break the bystander effect, right? One person acts, and then they call on others to act with them. He turns them from passive viewers into active supporters. Now, what's really wild here is just how fast the consequences come. All those phones that had just been silently recording the horror, well, now they became instruments of justice. The video went viral, the story was on every news channel. The pressure was so intense, the system had no choice but to act. In the courtroom, the officer was a completely different person. Stripped of his uniform and his power, all that arrogance was gone, replaced by a bowed head. And when they played the video of what he did, Rima's terrified screams just filled the silent room, a chilling reminder of his crime. The judge's verdict was swift, and it was severe. He absolutely nailed it, condemning the officer not just for hurting a child, but for betraying the very law he swore to protect. The officer was fired and sent to prison. Justice, it seems, was finally served. But the story doesn't really end in that courtroom. When Rima went back to school, she wasn't met with pity. She was met with applause. Her classmates held up posters calling her a hero. The very girl who was publicly humiliated had become a national symbol of courage. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? I think it boils down to what the colonel tells his daughter. Truth always wins, but someone has to step forward to make it win. This reframes the whole thing. The victory wasn't just his, it was sparked by her resilience and then fueled by his courage. And that brings us right back to that first question I asked you. This story shows the awful price of silence, but it also shows the unbelievable power of a single person's voice. It leaves you with one final thought, right? If one person standing up can spark a change across a whole nation, just imagine what we could achieve if we all decided to stand up together.